This is our 16th dive in a row, and this is the last day of this first leg of this expedition, looking at canyons about 80 miles off the coast of Long Island.
We are exploring an inner canyon area between Block and Alvin Canyon. It'll be an interesting dive because the canyon is fairly narrow. It's only about 200 meters wide.
Where we're going to be is so narrow, we'll have more confined area in which to have greater current velocities and energy that may impart some habitat differences to the animals that would want to live there.
Right now, I mean, these canyons, we're talking, their age is, when they were initiated, is always up for debate. They're relatively old. Probably many of them were pre-Pleistocene, so older than 2 million years. In most cases, the sediment transport in them now is, as we've seen, is from erosion within the canyon, slope failures, more minor events, but they still move around a lot of material.
Mm-hmm. This minor canyon is slightly different from the canyons, the Block and Alvin canyons. It doesn't extend onto the shelf. Now, we were talking last night that it likely did at one point and then was filled in by a landslide. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's probably partially filled in and had its top part actually removed by landslide. So it's a little different in terms of it doesn't come up the slope as far as some of these other ones.
I'm really excited to see if there'll be a difference at all in, I'm guessing not the community per se, but maybe the abundance of certain organisms on either side of the wall.
It's absolutely sort of mind-blowing to think that some of these corals we encounter once, one colony or two colonies on a given dive, if a dive is a mile long or so. It's just amazing to me that you have these, I don't call them oases, but these little corals that are like little plants in the deep sea, and these animals somehow are able to find them. We've come up with various hypotheses that we could try to test that we haven't really tested yet as to what benefit these animals have for the corals. It's certainly clear that the ophiuroids tend to keep the coral clean, if you will, that we see relatively clean tissue on those corals that have or hosting ophiuroids. Those ophiuroids preferentially live on the live parts of the coral, also interesting. So there may be some benefit to have that ophiuroid on that coral if you're a coral.
That's why I've always been sort of pointing out when it's been, when there's been a slight dusting of sediment, and you can see the dusting of sediment on this slope, even though it is still really steep, it is still accumulating some sediment, whereas where we saw all the corals, it was clean of sediment. The only thing that was trapping the sediment were the coral themselves.
The main agent of erosion for the canyons, the big canyons themselves, is initially sort of turbid flows of sediment and water cascading down them.
So at a time when sea level was a bit lower and river input onto the area unloaded a lot of sediment as well, so the sediment came kind of funneling through, creating and then sizing, eroding away part of the slope, creating these canyons?
Yeah, so it's fluvial, especially down along the mid-Atlantic and parts of the slope here. The further north you get, the influence of glacial inputs increases, and you can have extremely large canyons.
most of this is well known to science, but almost every day there's also one or two things that have not been seen before, and that's really why we're here, is to cover as much ground as possible and look in as many places until we hear that word from science that zoom in on that.
So we did observe this specific species of Antimora with a parasitic copepod on it during a previous dive. And Dr. Amanda Demopoulos was really excited, saying that observations of deep sea fishes with parasites are rare, although they do occur. It's difficult to capture them on video.
It's not easy out there, and you've done a great job of looking at all the input and being the voice of science out there for this exploration. It was fantastic. We learned a lot from each other, even though we're in this field together and we know each other already. For the most part, we still are learning from each other all the time. So I think it's an awesome thing to do. So again, thanks to everybody who joined in and their contributions. I really appreciate it. Take a week off here and we're going to do it again, right?